The clippers buzzed before she even understood what was happening. Cold hands gripped her head, jerking her curls tight. Laughter echoed through the county jail as black strands fell to the floor, each one a piece of her dignity. Procedure, they called it. But everyone in that room knew it was punishment. A phone recorded. Another officer joked. No one stopped it. And yet, through the humiliation, she stared straight into the camera, her voice calm, unshaken. "Tomorrow morning," she said, "you'll understand what real justice looks like." They laughed louder. But by 9 a.m. the next day, the same officers would be standing before her, in court. But first, please make sure to subscribe the channel and comment below from which city you are watching this video. Before the headlines, before the courtroom whispers, Diana Washington was just a woman who believed in fairness, even when it hurt to uphold it. Every morning, she arrived at the courthouse before the halls filled, her black robe folded neatly over one arm, her steps steady, deliberate. To those who knew her, she wasn't just Judge Washington. She was the woman who never forgot where she came from, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a factory worker who taught her that dignity doesn't depend on who's watching. Her office told her story without words, framed degrees from Harvard and Howard, a photo of her parents beaming beside the little house she'd once sworn she'd buy back for them. She'd done it all, clerked for the Supreme Court, fought civil rights cases, trained young lawyers who wanted to change the world. But for all her success, Diana carried something quieter, the unspoken exhaustion of a black woman who had seen justice fail people who looked like her. She'd read every case file like a wound reopening, every dismissed, stamped on misconduct reports like a personal insult. That morning, as sunlight spilled across her desk, she turned another page, two names, two faces she'd seen too often in complaints no one dared to pursue, Officers Collins and Martinez. Men who wore the badge like a shield for cruelty. Diana didn't know then that within 24 hours, those same names would be shouting at her, not across a courtroom, but through the bars of a jail. The case had been building for months, patterns of abuse disguised as procedure, bruises buried beneath reports marked unsubstantiated. Yet every time the evidence surfaced, it vanished just as quickly. Diana knew the game. She'd watched officers like Collins and Martinez twist the system into their armor. But she also knew patience was her weapon. Justice, she often said, was slow, but never still. That morning, a subpoena was issued. Collins and Martinez were to appear in court the next day, facing charges of excessive force and falsifying records. Diana would preside. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same department that had once ignored complaints from victims like her now had to answer to her bench. But before justice could unfold, everything changed. After hours in chambers, Diana left the courthouse in simple jogging clothes, a habit she clung to for peace. The park behind the old county jail was quiet, her escape from long days of reading pain off paper. She barely noticed the patrol car until it flashed its lights. Two men stepped out. Familiar faces. The same smirk, the same cold eyes. "Evening, ma'am," one said, voice dripping with mock politeness. "Need to see some ID." She complied. Calm, respectful, just as her father had taught her. But the exchange shifted fast. Her tone, her confidence, her refusal to cower, it unsettled them. They didn't see a woman jogging. They saw a woman who dared to look them in the eye. "Step out of the vehicle," one ordered. Within minutes, her wrists were cuffed. They called it resisting. She called it what it was, punishment. The county jail reeked of bleach and sweat. The laughter came before the clippers did. Cameras rolling. Voices mocking. Power parading as law. Her curls, symbols of pride and identity, fell in uneven patches to the concrete floor. She wanted to scream, but she didn't. She couldn't give them that satisfaction. Instead, she did the unthinkable. She looked straight into the lens of the body camera and spoke. "Tomorrow morning," she said softly, "you'll understand what justice means." Collins sneered. Martinez laughed. They thought it was another broken woman trying to sound brave. Hours later, a call rattled through the department like a thunderclap. The woman they had humiliated wasn't some ordinary detainee. She was Judge Diana Washington, the one assigned to oversee their trial. By sunrise, panic had replaced arrogance. Files were shredded, reports rewritten. One officer even tried to delete the footage, but digital traces don't vanish easily. The evidence of their cruelty was already being reviewed by internal affairs. When Diana walked into the courthouse that morning, her head still raw, her robe brushing against trembling hands, silence followed her. Every clerk, every officer, every reporter who'd seen the viral video knew The line between authority and abuse had just been shattered. But the storm was far from over. The trial would reveal more than their actions. It would expose the culture that allowed them to thrive. And as the doors to her courtroom closed behind them, everyone knew justice would no longer be patient. It would be personal. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that makes people aware of their own breathing. The officers stood before her, suits pressed, faces pale, eyes flicking between their lawyer and the woman they once mocked. Cameras waited like vultures. Reporters filled every seat, their pens ready to bleed ink the moment justice took a side. Diana sat high on the bench, her robe crisp, her head uncovered, a deliberate choice. The scars of what they'd done were visible, raw reminders beneath the fluorescent lights. But she didn't hide. She wanted them to see, to remember. Their attorney spoke first, polished words about misunderstandings, procedural confusion, and miscommunication. It was the same language that had buried countless complaints before hers. But this time, it met a wall of silence that no lie could climb. Then came the footage. The moment the clippers buzzed, the room froze. The laughter, the slurs, the humiliation, all of it echoed through the speakers. Martinez's voice cut through like acid. "Look at that nappy hair." Gasps rippled across the courtroom. Even the officers couldn't meet her eyes now. Diana didn't move. She didn't blink. Every second of that video played like a public confession, not just of cruelty, but of a system that allowed it. When it ended, she leaned forward, her voice low but resonant. "This court has seen many forms of power abused. But this," she paused, eyes fixed on them, "this was not law. This was hate, dressed in uniform." No one spoke. The tension in that room was unbearable, a collective breath held between retribution and redemption. As she raised the gavel, her hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. And when it struck wood, the sound didn't just mark judgment. It marked the end of silence. The verdict came down like thunder. Both officers were found guilty, not just of assault, but of violating the very oath they swore to protect. Their badges were stripped, their records laid bare for the world to see. For once, the system they hid behind became the one that held them accountable. Yet, even as the cameras flashed and headlines praised justice served, Diana knew the victory wasn't clean. Justice in America had never been about one case. It was about all the names that never made it this far. All the faces whose pain didn't trend online. She returned to her chambers that evening alone. No applause, no celebration. Just quiet, the kind that makes you think about the cost of every fight you win. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman forever changed. The hair would grow back, but the memory wouldn't fade. It wasn't the humiliation she carried now. It was the reminder that dignity, once stolen, takes courage to reclaim. But she also understood something deeper. True power isn't in revenge. It's in resilience. It's in standing tall in a room that once tried to break you, and speaking truth anyway. Diana's story spread beyond the courtroom. Students shared it. Activists quoted it. Mothers whispered it to their children as a promise that silence doesn't have to mean surrender. Because what happened to her wasn't an isolated injustice, it was a mirror. A reflection of every system that laughs before it listens, that punishes before it understands. And as her final ruling echoed through the nation, so did her words. Justice isn't vengeance. It's remembering that power without humanity is just another form of violence. So the question isn't whether Diana won. The real question is, when will we stop needing stories like hers to remind us what justice should already mean?